The worlds of Counter-Strike are becoming increasingly beautiful and realistic. Mappers don't just have to create the best map in existence, but they also have to ensure that all of their visual details make sense, as though it were a real place that has just been invaded by terrorists. So what were these places like just before the baddies turned up? So One Pool Plan generated a series of AI videos depicting the streets and buildings of Inferno, people eating in the courtyard at T-Spawn, tourists walking through each other in the background, NPCs milling about endlessly waiting for Agent 47 to drag them off into a back alley, a priest taking tourists on a tour around the church, a bunch of very bored looking people almost drinking wine at the winery, and a lot of people eating bananas at Banana, with one guy shoplifting a bunch of bananas up his sleeve. So yeah, maybe not quite a perfect rendition of how this place could be before the terrorists attacked. Or is it? What with how positive the feedback was to his AI-fueled project, I bought a bunch of premium AI generation packages and dove into the world of AI-generated video in 2025, which will likely be obsolete by later on in 2025, probably. I found mundane shots and prompts, such as this one, to be the most convincing once AI-ified, but also a bit mundane? While the more wild and outrageous I tried to make the results, the more weightless and surreal those results became, smelling of typical AI-generated slop. So it swings and roundabouts really, depending on what it is I'm trying to get out of what I put in. The current hype is with Google's VO3 model, which can add sound effects and all that stuff. But VO didn't let me upload images or videos for it to base the output on, which made it sort of pointless for this project. And its attempts to create elite crew characters rushing down Long A of Dust 2 looked quite generic to me. I created one using the older VO2 video model, which combined the worst of AI with the worst bits of 3D rendering and animation. But then I did get a VO3 version working with sound effects, but if anything it was even less faithful to my prompt than the older model had been. So for the rest of this video I stuck with Sora, which does at least let you base outputs on images that you upload to the site. Keeping the outputs faithful to those, however, was a different story. It proved to be remarkably difficult for me to stay focused on my goal of generating Counter-Strike related clips, given the potential for making stuff like this with it instead. I've always believed the best way to learn about something new is just to dick about and to have fun with it, so I let myself off for a while, but I was aware that my AI credits were limited, so soon got started on the task at hand. So here was my first very flawed attempt at depicting a bunch of terrorists and counter-terrorists playing about in the water and jumping off the bridge at Ancient Spawn. Oh no! But before you dismiss AI-generated videos, just remember that AI image generation, which is a lot more simple, just looked like this a few short years ago. So no doubt it will improve in leaps and bounds, and we'll soon have lots of accurate Will Smith eating spaghetti videos for our viewing pleasure. Regardless, this first attempt was impressively bad, and I refined the script I gave it, the first half describing what the scene was already, and then the second half being what I wanted it to envision. And I got a better, but still deeply flawed result. But the potential for AI-generated fluid effects is vast. It seems to like simulating water just as much as I do. I then moved on over to this area, requesting a depiction of Counter-Strike characters exploring a tomb for treasures, holding fiery torches to light up the rooms. What I got was a first and third person view from a video game perspective, which was pretty cool, but maybe a bit too video gamey for my liking. I suppose the confusion comes from my prompt containing video game elements, but I found the greatest challenge being to keep the output remaining faithful to the input image. AI simply loves to go off on a weird tangent and to reimagine the entire scene in some ludicrous way. I then wanted a bunch of people exploring and climbing the Aztec ruins, and it, again, depicted a third-person perspective of a guy jumping in low gravity to another pyramid just out of sight, which ended up looking suspiciously like the first one did. And that's when I decided to break this up into stages. I'd start by AI generating an image of what I wanted the video to be about, like so. And then when I was happy with this image, I then just got the video processing bit to animate that. Doing this yielded significantly better, more accurate and higher quality looking results. But as you can see, after just a second or so the AI would lose interest and return to doing its own thing. Out of ideas, I simply gave it the image and left the prompt blank, allowing it to interpret the image as it saw fit. With hilarious results! I expect future AI video generators to give you more control over iterative improvements on an output, so that it's a back and forth as you converge on your desired result. Gosh, isn't this hard work? Let's return to my life for a second, and I proudly present to you Kitchen Rave. So, 5 minutes into this video, maybe it's time I focused on depicting some Counter-Strike scenes. Here's the underpass from Overpass, where the underclass behaves above the law. I realise that AI struggles to tell the scale of some of the scenes, and you probably wouldn't want to confront these 9-foot tall youths with scary faces on your own. In my complete naivete, I caused Sora to censor one of my prompts, where I requested children playing in the park. But I still wanted this park scene, so I just asked for lots of old people playing in it instead, which it's fine with. I'm unsure if AI generated content will get more or less entertaining as it improves. This early era of the technology certainly has its own style, which I'll call Sloppy Valley, where stuff can look almost photorealistic, but it doesn't behave quite realistically just yet. And it often shows a telltale party trick of moving the camera to a dreamlike depiction of the original image. An alternate reality where in this instance slides act like swings and where swings act like God knows what. For some reason it then decided to transition back to the original scene again, generating this monstrosity on the slide. I wanted staff eating their lunch in the break room, but it kept getting sidetracked with related but irrelevant clips of people eating lunch at work. Although nobody's really doing a good job of eating their lunch, every person in these videos is telling a story. From the woman falling through her chair and then floating back up through it again, to the woman next to her, floating through the table and morphing into somebody else. I found that by keeping the prompt shorter and simpler, it allowed the AI to stick to the original scene for longer, or indefinitely. So that's the moral of the story here. Keep the prompt easier for the AI to follow, because the more you try to control it, the more likely it is to generate a fresh scene from scratch in order to comply with it. That scene from Nuke near the start of this video started with a few failures, when I was personally requesting people walking about inspecting stuff and a forklift driving about. Again, under the impression that the more advice I gave it, the better the output would be, but that didn't work. So by using a prompt as short and as simple as people walking around, it correctly identified the nuclear power plant setting in this scene and even threw in a forklift truck. Thanks AI, leave it enough space to fill in the gaps for itself. Although it still couldn't handle the more ambitious prompts that I gave it. Soon switching to a different but similar view of the power plant for things like explosions and stuff like that. You may never have set foot inside it, but peer through this window in Italy and you'll find a lovely little restaurant. So I requested, AI generated some stereotypically Italian looking people eating pizza at this pizzeria in Italy. And while the scene soon changed, it kept all the fun looking characters and the stringiest cheese that I've ever seen. So it's a matter of trial and error and occasionally in sheer brute force, generating enough videos that you eventually get one that you're happy with. I always thought it was strange that Train's warehouse wasn't wetter, given that half its ceiling is missing. What if this car could be driven? And what if I wanted a flyby of office's exterior? Can AI generate that with the correct depth from just a single image? It doesn't do a bad job. And what if Counter-Strike's office map was actually an episode of The Office? No, not that one. Yes, a boardroom looking scene full of tired, sleepy looking elite crew. Just what I wanted. It's hard to tell where things will go from here. I expect video generation will continue to improve, just like image generation did before it. When I think about it, it doesn't allow anything that wasn't possible before. It simply levels the playing field somewhat between large expensive movie crews and home studios. It makes it easier to spread fake stuff, and everyone will be able to create their own AI generated stuff to share. We won't be able to trust anything we see online anymore. I mean, it was like that already, but now the internet is so damn saturated with AI generated content, even our mums are growing wise to the deception going on, which I see as being progress. The war is really going to play out on TikTok to determine whether AI is as engaging as human-generated content is, and what sort of human input and control over its output is required for optimal results. I don't think AI will replace human creators, it will merely reward those who can shape the technology to human desires the most. Twitter will continue to be a mess. Echo chambers already exist even without AI-generated content, but now they will happily accept AI-generated stuff so long as it fits in with their world beliefs and prejudices. Even if, deep down, they know the stuff they're consuming isn't real. But they'll still want to say it is because it makes them feel good. Like I said, Twitter will continue to be a mess. For the end user, I don't think much will change. It'll just be more content to keep us wasting as much of our life on our phones as possible. But for the people making the stuff, the consequences are profound. I suspect we're at a very significant turning point, And as much as people, such as myself, are attacked for using AI, even when we're not, at the end of the day, it's ultimately our livelihoods that are at stake, and those who fail to adapt will die. So in the grand scale of things, using AI to generate peaceful scenes from Counter-Strike is one of the more positive, constructive and creative uses for AI. It's imaginative, it's thought-provoking, couldn't feasibly be made in any other way, and I commend Simple Plan for coming up with the idea. The footage you're seeing here is from a follow-up video he made about Overpass, which, unlike his first video, has been downvoted into oblivion. And before you say that's because people are getting bored or wising up to whatever AI is, since then he's posted another video on Nuke, and that one's been well received again. Seems like it's completely the luck of the draw. Stuff is moving very quickly. As you saw earlier in the video, there's already a better generator out there in the form of Google's VO3, which just as I finished this video, I was finally granted access to without the glitches and problems that were restricting me previously. My time with it is very limited, my credits were finite, but as you can see from these videos, my results were significantly better than what Sora could output. But just because they were better, it didn't mean they were quite as entertaining. I joked that this video would be obsolete very soon, probably by later on in 2025, but it seems it's outdated even before this video could be released. Things are moving that fast.
It's important to have modern media, but also understand your roots.
I see.